It's Horse Beef here. What's going on, guys? I want to talk about the aftermath of Ilia Topuria vs Charles Oliveira. Now, I originally wasn't going to make this because I thought there wouldn't be any controversy surrounding this fight. I thought that the coping would be to a minimum, but then again, I guess I gave the Charles Oliveira fans, or I guess the Islam Makhachev or Dagestani fan base, a little bit too much respect in that regard, because especially after Ilia Topuria was promoted to #1 on the pound-for-pound list, that is when the detractors came out of the woodwork and started making fools of themselves. So let's take a look, man. And of course, our #1 source will be Reddit, right, where most fools in this MMA space, or in the world in general, do reside. And then we have this absolutely hilariously frantic post here. I'm sorry, but how can you make such a pathetic mistake? That's literally the first thing you learn in boxing. Keep your hands up. I'm sorry, but this win is pathetic. It's not going to age well. And then he goes on to say, what a fucking fluke. People glaze on Topuria, but it just shows how low the UFC overall level is. This dude is exposing those bums just like Khabib did back in the days with his wrestling. Wait, damn, so I guess Khabib being a can crusher is now confirmed. Ilia's crushing cans. Every champion in the UFC is just a can crusher because the level in the UFC is just so low, man. The premier organization in MMA, right? These are just a bunch of bums. But on this point of it's a fluke win because he made a rookie mistake and dropped his hand. Well, I mean, we have just a complete compilation of Charles Oliveira making that exact same mistake throughout his entire career. This is not a new thing that Charles did. Ilia Topuria was just good enough to be able to exploit it. Remember, he did the same thing as Dustin Poirier, got dropped for it, got dropped by Justin Gaethje, he got dropped by Islam Makhachev before getting submitted because he dropped his left hand. He's made that same mistake. The difference is that with Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, that they're elite enough to capitalize on these mistakes and actually finish the guy. Because he was making those same mistakes all throughout his legendary title run as well, right? And this is also how the current 205 champion Magomed Ankalaev looks every single time he throws a left hand. That right hand is all the way down at his waist. He's making that rookie mistake, but it takes the best of the best to actually exploit these mistakes that the best of the best makes. Because the best of the best, right, when it comes to MMA, these dudes are not professional boxers. Of course they will make these mistakes with their hands. These tendencies are just simply not drilled into them. Even Ilia Topuria drops his hands. So this whole excuse, this whole, it's just a fluke, it's just a fluke. No. Ilia Topuria recognized the frailty in his striking defense and was actually able to spark him out as a result because he's that good and because he hits that hard. Right, there's a difference, right? Ilia is just a different type of puncher, as I keep saying. But let's move on, though. This one I feel like is rage bait, at least for the sake of this individual's mental faculties. I hope that this is just rage bait and he's not being serious at all. We then get this interesting post here. What do you guys think of this? And you just look at this, right? 36 coming off of brutal loss. Yes, Volkanovski is currently 36 years old, but you see, time is linear, right? So think about it. I know it's crazy. Ilia Topuria fought Volkanovski around a year and a half ago, I believe it was, right? I think it was February of 2024, right? Meaning that, oh my God, guys, this is crazy. This is actually crazy to think about. Volkanovski was actually 35 back then, dude. Oh my God, he's 36 now. Doesn't mean he was 36 when he fought Ilia. I know, it's fucking crazy, dude. Cut down to 145 after bulking, right? That's the excuse I see thrown around quite a bit for why he KO'd Max. And that excuse may work, right? It may just work, but at the same time, man, Max Holloway has never shown to be chinny. He's never even shown any sort of decline in his chin. So just because he put on a few pounds more of muscle and actually made the bulk up to 155, he looked perfectly fine on the scales, looked no worse than he ever did, and he had a perfect training camp, right? Didn't he speak so much about how his training camp was so perfect? And he looked physically great on Fight Night as well. But watch that right hand land. Watch the right hand that was the beginning of the end against Max. Watch that punch land, and you try telling me that doesn't do the same thing to any other fighter from 145 up to fucking 170. No, when that shot lands from Ilia Topuria, you're getting stunned at the very least, right? Max Holloway's chin is just so good that he was still able to stay on his feet after a nuclear fucking bomb like that landed on his chin. And then Charles Oliveira, of course, 36 in 2 months, guys, right? 36 in 2 months. Of course, he can't be honest and say he's 35. He has to say 36 in 2 months. He has to frame it in that way as if that means something, guys. Dude, I'm sorry. Age with nutrition and, I don't want to say it, but PEDs that these fighters are probably taking, right? Because, let's be honest, right? Just because these fighters aren't testing positive does not mean they're not taking shit to help them out, right? age is becoming less and less of a factor as time goes on. Fighters are not declining in the same way that they used to, right? The difference is, like, Charles Oliveira is 36. Yes, you should maybe bring up the fact that he has a lot of mileage, right? If you want to talk about Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira having asterisks on those wins, then talk about their mileage, right? Don't talk about the bulk and the 145 weight cut and all that, because that's just bullshit. It's never applied before. And same thing for Charles Oliveira, like 36 years old. Oh my God, 36 years old. Charles Oliveira, he's still in physically great condition and he's performing well, and he's only lost to the best. He lost a razor-thin fight to Armen, who everyone considers to be a nightmare matchup for Islam and Ilia. A razor-thin fight that some people thought he should have won. So what the fuck are we on about? He's declining just because he's close to 36? Fuck off. He lost to Ilia, he lost to Armen, he lost to Islam. These excuses are fucking pathetic, dude. They're so pathetic. But what do you guys think of this? Let me know in the comments, though. What do you think about these particular excuses? What do you think about the fact that Volkanovski is 36 now, but was 35 when he fought Ilia? What do you think about that, right? It's crazy how time works, right? What do you think about the cut down to 145 after putting on a few more pounds of muscle? What do you think about that, guys, right? 36 in 2 months. Oh, my goodness. What do you think about that, guys? Oh, please, like, because this is really crazy shit, man. I'm starting to think that Ilia Topuria is a fucking bum. And then we have this one that's at least attempting to base their opinion off of some kind of logic, but I mean, they're making the mistake of going back, like 5 years to Ilia Topuria's first fight in the UFC, where he looked to have slowed down after coming at Youssef Zalal with a heavy grappling approach. And this win ages very well, by the way. It ages extremely well with how Youssef Zalal's been doing. He's a great prospect at 145. But this individual fails to mention that Ilia Topuria took this fight on short notice, and I believe he was recovering from some kind of illness, and he has never shown to slow down like this since then. I know he's finished a lot of his opponents early on in these fights, but he went 5 rounds with Josh Emmett, man. Going 5 rounds, throwing that much volume against anybody would get you tired if you have some kind of a suspect gas tank. And yes, Ilia has admitted that grappling does use up more energy, so he prefers to strike. But I think basing that opinion off of a fight that, like I said, took place 5 years ago or so in his debut, which he took on short notice, recovering from an illness, it's just very selective, and it appears to be reaching for those grapes, as Tito Ortiz would say. So let's move on to the next one here. And then we have this post titled, "Beating the pound for pound leftover doesn't make you pound for pound, dude. But beating Renato Moicano definitely makes you pound for pound, right? Beating Dustin Poirier, who's literally, I mean, if you want to use that logic, right? And I don't agree with this, but Dustin Poirier is Charles Oliveira's leftovers. Oh my God, Islam, you're so trash, dude. You went life and death with Dustin Poirier, who's Charles Oliveira and Khabib's leftovers. What an asterisk on Islam's record. Oh my God. He's been a fraud this entire time, apparently. Jesus, it's just stupid fucking logic. It makes no sense, right? Like, all of these fucking morons online who have just the most basic opinions possible, they base everything off of MMA math, and they can't even fathom the idea that a fighter can improve, right? Everything is about decline. They never think about a fighter getting better, right? That's completely unfathomable to these fucking retards, quite frankly. And then we have a gem here which goes on to say, "Enough of this. Stop making this guy look good by feeding him guys with 10-year-plus careers with shot chins." But he does go on to elaborate here with some fantastic points, I must say, right? 1, Volk just KO'd by Islam and fought another war versus Islam where he lost a decision. 3 wars with Holloway. Okay, let's pump the brakes on the 3 wars with Holloway. I'm sorry. Like, the second fight, yeah, you could call that maybe a war, but the first and third fight were all Volkanovski. He took very little damage in those fights, man. The only fights where he took any damage was in the second one. It's not 3 wars with Holloway. 2 of those were very dominant. Let's not play revisionist history here. But of course, these guys love that. That's all they really have at the end of the day, right? 10+ year career, over 35 years old. Great. I'm not even going to touch on the 35-year-old because by bringing up his age, you're completely ignoring the fact that as soon as Ilia left the division, Volk established himself as the best 145er in the world, currently fighting at 145. So please, and at the age of 36, right? After that brutal KO loss to Ilia Topuria. Oh my God, it's almost like fighters can recover after a brutal knockout loss. What? Are you fucking serious, dude? That's crazy. And 2, Charles has been dropped by Poirier, Gaethje, and Makhachev, and wobbled by Chandler. Oh my God. His chin has been shot for a long time. What do you mean? Then why couldn't any of them knock him out? Why could any of them knock him out? If they're all dropped him, they're all hurting him. Then he's always at a suspect chin, right? What's the difference here? The difference... Oh, sorry, he also goes on to say over 35 years old also. Oh, that's such a crazy point, right? Charles has been dropped by all these guys, but like, how is that at all a point? He fucking. It's never been his chin that was a great attribute. It's always been his recovery ability. But Ilias sparked him out, so he had no chance to recover, right? 3, Max has been in so many wars, it's hard to count. People were already worried about him for years. Then after looking amazing at 155, he decides to cut lots of muscle to make 145 again. Big mistake. He was dehydrated, and chin was already worn down a lot. Dehydrated, man, that goes for anyone cutting weight, you fucking dum-dum. I mean, chin was already worn down a lot. 15-plus year career, 33 years old. Oh my god, guys, 33 years old. You mean prime years? Generally speaking, for fighters, right? Or oh no, dude, he was in his fucking physical prime, and he got KO'd by Ilia. Fuck, dude. We then have this fantastic comparison, right? Circling their best wins. I suppose this is what this is supposed to be. But let's take a look at what this individual considers to be good wins versus like just write-off wins, right? Because the ones that he circles, you would assume those are the ones that are supposed to be good, right? So for Islam Makhachev, you have Armen Tsarukyan all the way down there, which, you know, I would almost agree with just because of the name, right? But you do kind of ignore the fact that was his debut, right? I almost feel like if you're going to circle Armen Tsarukyan at that point in Tsarukyan's career, making his debut on short notice, you almost have to include Yusuf Zalal in there as well, considering that he's also on the rise, right? A ranked 145er now. And Ilia Topuria took that fight on short notice and still won it, right? I would say that should be the case if you're going to include the Armen Tsarukyan win, circle that one as an elite one. But whatever, let's just move on here. Dan Hooker and Bobby Green. But then you look over at Ilia, and this person failed to circle Josh Emmett or Bryce Mitchell. That's interesting, but you circle Dan Hooker and Bobby Green, of all people, which you got the title shot off of. But then you get into the real ones, right? Charles Oliveira, Volkanovski, Fat Volkanovski. I don't think that one should honestly be circled. I know it's a head kick, though, so at the same time, yeah, sure. Dustin Poirier, but then the audacity to even circle fucking Renato Moicano, and then Jack Della Maddalena, who he hasn't even fought yet. He hasn't even fought Jack Della Maddalena. What the fuck are we doing here? But he also circles Paddy Pimblett. I don't really understand it. But Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and Charles Oliveira, those were his only good wins, dude. Simply put, those were his only good wins. I mean, I don't really have to elaborate on this much. What do you guys think? Right? What do you guys think? Like, when you compare their resumes objectively, is Islam's really that much better? Like, yes, his pre-title run victories are better than Ilias. Sure. But not by that much, if we're being totally real. I mean, if we're being totally real, right? And since Ilia won the title, I would say that his run has been stronger, right? Let's think about recency. Pound for pound is all about recency. Last 3 wins. Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway, Volkanovski. KOs, right? KOs. Last 3 wins for Islam Makhachev. Number 10 or 11 ranked Moicano on short notice. Okay. Dustin Poirier, right? Coming off of a win over Benoit Saint-Denis before getting KO'd by Justin Gaethje, right? 35. Oh, 35. Oh my God, he was 35, guys. So he must have been a fucking bum. And then Fat Volkanovski with love handles off the couch, right? Compare those last 3 wins. It's really all you have to see there, in my opinion. Recency bias plays a huge part in the pound for pound. And in my opinion, there's just no argument that Islam should be above Ilia at this point. Ilia is now a double champ. Well, not double champ technically, but 2 weight class champion. That's it. He is pound for pound number 1. There's no argument for Islam here unless you're really reaching for grapes, dude. And of course, we have all kinds of posts like this, right? People reposting the shit out of this from Armen Tsarukyan accusing Ilia of ducking. And I don't mind Armen Tsarukyan trying to drum up some kind of controversy and trying to bait Ilia into calling him out or whatever. And I do agree that it should be Armen versus Ilia. I think that's the best fight right now to make at 155. Like right now, Ilia versus Paddy doesn't interest me that much. I think Paddy should fight Justin Gaethje. I know that fight was rumored and apparently it's not happening, but that fight should happen. And in the meantime, Ilia should defend. He's saying before the end of the year, so maybe November, December, I think he should fight Armen, right? But running from the real contender only proves one thing. You're scared. Deep down, you know exactly what happens if you ever step in there with me. But in my opinion, the same result. I think Ilia by KO, but he also did call out Armen in the post-fight speech, right? It's all just up to Joe Rogan here. Joe Rogan is the reason as to why this narrative is going around that Ilia is ducking Armen. He quite literally called out Armen in the post-fight speech.
There is a guy that when it comes to the liver, his back hurts.
Right, and Armen hasn't fought since he pulled out of that fight, like very randomly, and he's still presumably not in the good graces of the UFC. Dana White's spoken about it. Him making weight as the backup fighter is a step in the right direction. But even though he's the rightful contender, what makes you think that he's just going to jump right into another title shot after squandering his last opportunity at the last second? The man fucking pulled out, and then we got a complete write-off of a main event between Islam and Moicano where everyone knew what was going to happen in that fight. And that's because of Armen's last second pull-out. Because he presumably wasn't going to make weight, and there hasn't even really been much of an explanation as to what the issue with his back was. So I'm not trying to hear it, man. I'm not trying to hear anyone saying that he's ducking Armen. The man called out Armen, but it's up to the UFC to give Armen the shot, and clearly Ilia versus Paddy will draw the most eyes and make the most money for the company. And as we're finished off with these Reddit posts, right, and there were so many. I have an even longer list that I could have gone through. I just didn't want to continue talking about Reddit posts for this entire video, even though they are fun to make fun of, right? But then we have Mexican martial arts here, who I'm a fan of personally. I used to watch his videos quite a bit. He was my favorite MMA creator. He was like the only one I watched for a good amount of time. Then I think he had to get a 9 to 5, but he's back making pretty consistent videos, and he's doing pretty well for himself right now. And I like that. I like his videos. He's a funny dude. He is quite satirical. So I'm not too sure if what he's been up to recently has been satirical. But let's just take a look at the timeline of his videos recently regarding Ilia versus Charles here. Because this to me is very reminiscent of when MMA Guru tried to convince himself and everybody else that somehow Sean O'Malley deserved to win that first fight against Murad Dvalishvili. This is kind of reminding me of the same thing. Of course, he's not arguing that Charles Oliveira should have won, but it's just pure cope, unless he's being satirical, right? It could just be going right over my head, but I'm not too sure. But his prediction, he actually did predict Charles Oliveira to win this fight. And then after Ilia Topuria wins, he posts a video titled, Ilia Topuria hasn't beaten anyone in their prime. But then why did you pick Charles Oliveira, right? That means you either underestimated Ilia Topuria significantly, or you just way overestimated Charles, right? But the fact that Charles isn't in his prime wasn't factored in your prediction. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have picked him, right? So, I don't know. To me, going from this guy is going to win to, oh, this guy just wasn't in his prime, right, is just weird, because it's a difference of like 2 days, right? So you pick him, and then he's not in his prime. You pick him, and then suddenly he's not in his prime. So which one is it? Why did you pick him in the first place? Not too sure. But then he posts another video saying Ilia Topuria, the most overrated fighter in the UFC. And he pretty much goes on to make the same points, right? That he's just not tested, and he's beaten a whole bunch of fighters who have already been beaten or who are just past their prime. But how do we dictate who is in their prime, when they were in their prime, when their peak was, right? These are the elite of the elite. Sometimes, believe it or not, right, a better fighter, right, the next generation, as Ilia Topuria keeps saying, just comes along and starts picking these dudes off. That's just how it is. The old guard has to fall at some point, right? Everyone's talking about how elite 155 is so dangerous, man. We got Charles Oliveira, dude. We got Dustin Poirier, man. The old or the young guard can't break through, dude. They're too elite. And then somebody comes through and finally breaks through, right? I know Armen did it by split decision, but Ilia goes out there and actually just sparks Charles, right? The only one to actually do that to Charles Oliveira. Right? No one's ever put him out like that. No one. Right, the same Charles who won the belt originally off of Michael Chandler, right, bum Michael Chandler, Bellator level Michael Chandler, who's been passed around the division since then, and only really fucking knocked out Tony Ferguson and Dan Hooker. Ooh, great wins, right? And this was how many years ago? When Charles Oliveira was much more close to his prime. He almost got finished by Chandler in the first round. As far as I'm concerned, this is the exact same Charles that we've had since his title run. There's no difference in his style, no difference in his skills. There is no difference. He's the same guy. And that's why I think these arguments are just so stupid. It's so stupid, man, to do everything you can to take away from Ilia Topuria just because he's this undefeated phenom of a fighter knocking out all your favorite guys. Just deal with it. It is what it is. This is good for the sport. Ilia Topuria is the best thing to happen to MMA in the last, like, I don't know, fucking five or so years at the very least, man. This man is very much needed within the UFC right now. He is. He's a star, organic star as well. He kind of started off, doing the Conor McGregor thing, but then through his skills and through his performances and through the absolute devastation that he's caused inside that octagon, he has become a star. And it's just good for the sport. So I just can't wrap my head around people hating on Ilia. It doesn't make any sense to me. But then again, guys, you will still continue to underestimate him, right? The next guy he knocks out, I'm sure if he knocks out Paddy, the narrative would be that Paddy wasn't that good, right? And I would admit to the same thing. I don't actually think Paddy is very good. That's why I don't care to see Ilia fight him, because I think it's a layup win. But I'm sure people will find a way to write off his victory over Armen if he is to beat him, or if he moves up and beats Islam, or Islam loses to JD and moves back down and Ilia beats Islam. It's going to be because Islam moved up and put on more muscle, right? The same argument that they use for Max losing to Ilia, right? There will always be something at the end of the day, but I do enjoy making fun of these silly arguments. It's really not that serious at the end of the day. It is just fun for me.